All right. So, welcome to the session, everyone. Welcome to the Zoho Flow for Zoho One webinar series. So, our idea for this series is that we can help you with building your own custom integrations for your Zoho One applications and automate workflows between them. And once again, my name is Arjun, and I'm a product marketer from Zoho Flow. And right now, I take care content marketing and user education for the platform. And in this session, we're going to cover HR and recruitment workflow ideas for Zoho One users. What are we going to discuss today? Firstly, we'll just cover the very basics of what a workflow is and what workflow automation is. This will help you understand the concept behind building a workflow and then automating it. And we'll also see why Zoho Flow is the perfect integration partner for your organization, especially when you're using a Zoho One suite. We'll also quickly go through the platform for a quick demo, and I'll use a very simple use case to show how to build a flow from scratch in Zoho Flow. And then we'll move to the exciting part where we'll discuss plenty of use cases that will help in both HR uh, as well as recruiting workflows. And finally, we'll take in your questions, and both me and Arvind will answer your questions. All right. So before I jump into the session, I would like to understand you all better. So for that, right now we're going to push two questions to you. It would be great if all of you can just answer and participate in both these poll questions. So I'll just wait for a minute before I go to the next slide. So yeah, everyone please answer the questions that will appear under the polls tab. All right. So what is a workflow? So think of your own organization, and you can see that in any organization, you will have like different verticals and departments, right? And each of these departments will have different teams taking care of very specific activities for that department. Now, if you look at HR, you will have a team taking care of employee experience. There will be another team taking care of onboarding or candidate recruitment, sourcing, and so on, right? Now, there are other departments and there are other teams that come under each department. And each of these departments and teams will use their own set of apps. And in any activity that these teams perform, you will have data moving from one app to the other, right? In the case of, let's say, okay, we'll take an example of an employee onboarding experience. Whenever a new employee is added in your organization, you would have a set of steps that you perform every time a new employee is added, right? So this can be something like notifying the employee that they have been added to this particular team and who they'll be reporting to. Another will be sending them documents to be signed, maybe using Zoho Sign. And you will also maybe take a presentation for all of them that might be using Zoho Show, and so on. So there will be plenty of activities that you perform for each and every time a new employee is added in your organization. And if you look closely at these steps that you take, you will see that the steps themselves are the same. It's the data, or the employee information in this case, is the only thing that changes in these fixed number of steps. So we can call these fixed number of steps, or these steps that are performed when something happens somewhere else, as a workflow. Now you can see that tens or maybe hundreds of workflows put together forms a process. So if employee onboarding is a process, then the first workflow can be notifying the employee of their reporting manager, their team, and so on. Another workflow can be sending them documents to be signed, sending them other documents that are required for them to be read and understood, and so on. And all these workflows put together forms this process called employee onboarding. Now, this is what a workflow is. So any workflow will have a few components that we need to understand before we can try to automate them. So any workflow will start with a trigger. In the example I just mentioned, the trigger was the new employee being added to the organization. That could be in Zoho People, right? And now there are different actions that are performed just after this employee is added. So one can be sending documents to be signed. One can be notifying them via their click channel. Another can be sending an email confirming that they have accepted these documents or signed these documents. Now, a workflow can have just one action or they can have multiple actions. Now, in case, let's say you have different types of employees coming in. So one can be a normal employee, and another can be managerial positions. So you want to see if a particular employee is a manager. In that case, you might have certain number of steps that are not there for the other types of employees, right? So in those cases, you would want a condition to be checked and if it's true, you want a certain number of steps to be taken. And if it's not true, then another set of actions to be performed. So in that case, you would want something like a logic. So there are different kinds of logic. So one could be conditions, as I just mentioned. Another could be delaying a set of actions and so on. But we will cover this in the later part of the session. But just so you know, a workflow has these three main components: a trigger, action, and logic. All right, so why automate workflows? So just as I mentioned a few minutes back, all these workflows have the same steps over and over again, right? No matter how many employees are added, the steps do not change. So when you have repeatable steps, they are easy to be automated. And in most cases, when you have repeating steps, if they are done manually, there is a probability that you will spend more and more time on doing these manual tasks. And you would also invite the possibility of errors going inside each of these data. So to avoid that, you can easily automate these workflows using an integration platform like Zoho Flow. Now, there is a more important reason why you have to use a platform to integrate, and let's look at that. So why use Zoho Flow to automate workflows? When you look at your business from a bird's eye view, you can see that all these different teams in that business will use an integration of some sort. Some can use native integrations that come with your apps. Some can use code, and some may even use a platform like Zoho Flow. Now, when you have different teams using different types of solutions to integrate your apps, what happens is that as the business grows, as it scales, you will have no idea of which team is using what kind of solution to integrate their apps. Now, the same data that is in sales might have a different kind of set of data in marketing, and it can happen in HR and recruitment as well. Now, to avoid all this and to have all of these different teams have the same consistent data across the organization, and to make it easy for you to manage all these integrations as your business grows, it's important that you consolidate all these integrations into a single platform. Now, imagine this: let's say you are the admin for the company, the IT admin, and you want to take a look at how data is moving across different verticals or different teams in the same vertical. Now, each team, if they're using different types of integration solutions, they can have no idea of who has set up what. And in case a workflow fails to execute, how do we troubleshoot it? So in order to avoid all this, you need a centralized platform that can bring all these integrations together, right? And especially when you're using Zoho One, Zoho Flow comes in that package. So you don't have to pay more to have an integration platform. And on top of that, you get a centralized visibility of all your integrations across your organization. And Zoho Flow also provides a workflow builder that lets you build workflows exactly the way we draw workflow diagrams. Now, we all have drawn workflow diagrams, right? You would also have workflows built and drawn in your organization and teams as well. So you can build workflows exactly the way they are in Zoho Flow. And there's something more important here that Zoho Flow supports 1,000+ applications. So you don't have to worry if your application can be integrated or not. Zoho Flow supports integration for all the Zoho One applications, plus third-party applications like WordPress plugins, Google Apps, Microsoft apps, and all other popular cloud apps. And along with that, Zoho Flow also supports on-prem integrations. So if your organization has apps on your private network, you can easily integrate them using Zoho Flow. All right, so now it's time for us to see the platform and get a feel of how the platform is and how you can build a workflow from scratch in Zoho Flow. So in order to do that, I'm going to take a very simple example that all of you can relate to. And using that example, I'm going to build a workflow in Zoho Flow. All right, so this use case might be familiar to a lot of you. The idea is very simple. When a new candidate is added in Zoho Recruit, you want that information to be saved in a spreadsheet, probably in Zoho Sheet. And you would also want to send a notification to the team that's taking care of this hiring, and maybe send a personal message to the manager. And in Zoho Work Drive, you want to create a folder where you can store this particular candidate's documents like resume or their portfolio or a task submission document that they have submitted. So let's see how we can automate this entire process. Now, by the way, if you were to do these steps manually, I think we can all agree that for one candidate, you would spend at least 10 minutes to do all this. Now, imagine doing that for, let's say, 100 candidates. You would lose about 1,000 minutes of your time doing the same number of steps every single time. Now, let's see how we can automate this workflow. So first, I'll show you the Zoho Recruit interface that we have. And here I have opened the candidates module. I'll also show you the spreadsheet where we'll want the information of these candidates to be sent to. So this is the spreadsheet. I've just created a test channel for to send data. Just assume that this is the manager's click channel. So this is where we want the message to appear. And under the team folder and under general, I've also created a folder where I want to store each candidate's documents in separate folders. So now let's look at Zoho Flow. So when you open Zoho Flow, this is where you'll land. You'll be in the My Flow section. So don't be overwhelmed with the amount of the number of different flows and folders that we have here. We are using this account for all our demo and work purposes. So yeah, you will see a lot of flows and folders here, but I'll just use this folder and these flows for our session. So to create a new folder, to create a new flow, all you need to do is to click on the Create Flow button over here. And you have to give a name. For this one, I'm going to name it Candidate Management. And I'm going to click on Create. If you remember the workflow components that I showed earlier, you'll know that the first step in a workflow is the trigger, which initiates the workflow. So here we want the workflow to start when a new candidate is added in Zoho Recruit. So since Zoho Recruit is an app, I'm going to click on configure here under app, and I'll search for recruit. And there it is. Now I'll just have to select the trigger that I want for Zoho Recruit. So we want it to trigger the flow when a new record is created. So I'll just click next. So this is where Zoho Flow is asking for a connection. So a connection is nothing but your authorization to Zoho Flow to access your particular app account. So in this case, it's the Zoho Recruit account. And you always have to create separate connections for any number of apps that you use. So in this case, I have already created a connection, but I'll just show you how to create one. Just click on the new button here. We just have to give a name, and it will open up this authorization screen where you'll have to accept for Zoho Flow to read these information and to make changes in the data there. So I'm just gonna go back and use the connection that I already have now, which is this one. So when you have a connection in Zoho Flow, it will automatically pull in the modules associated with that account it's connected to. So if you remember, if you go to Recruit, you can see that all these are the different modules in Zoho Recruit. There is one module called candidates, interviews, referrals, and so on. So what we are interested in is the candidates module. So we'll just select it from the modules over here. And there it is. And our trigger is set. So once we have set the trigger, let's look at what the first action is. If you remember, the first action is adding those information into our Zoho sheet spreadsheet. Let's see how we can do that. So in order to add an action to the trigger, all you need to do is go to the left side and you can see there is this apps tab. Under that, let's search for whichever app that you want the action for. So in this case, it is Zoho Sheet. And there it is. And if you expand this app, you can see all the actions that are available for this particular app. So what we want to do is create a new row to the spreadsheet over there. So I'll just drag and drop the create row action and place it in the slot here. Now, again, if you're using it for the first time, you will need to create a new connection for Zoho Sheet. But here I'm going to use my existing connection. And Zoho Flow has already loaded, already fetched all the spreadsheets that I have in my account. So under that, I'm going to select candidates. So now Zoho Flow knows the columns I have added in this spreadsheet. We have 5 columns here, and all those 5 columns have appeared in this configuration screen. All right. So what we need to do now is to send information from the trigger to this particular spreadsheet. And we want to send the ID of the candidate in Zoho Recruit to this field, the first name to this one, and so on, right? Let's see how we can do that. So all the information that comes from a previous step. So when I say previous step, what it means is that if this is the 5th action in this flow, on the right side, you will have 4 different tabs here. So you can see the first one, you have the trigger here. If you have another 4 actions before this action, they will all appear here. So since there is only a trigger before this action, that's the only thing that will appear here. So just click on that to expand it, and you can see all the data points that come from the trigger are available here. So in this case, it's a new candidate added, right? So it will have all the information that you will fill in Zoho Recruit while you're adding a new candidate. So here I need the ID field. So how do I do that? I can either just go to the right side and click on this candidate ID, or you can just click here and then search for the candidate ID here. Now, if I click on this variable will be mapped to this field. You can see there's a dollar symbol and a couple of brackets, right? It means that this field is pulling data from this variable over here. Similarly, let's map the other variables. I'll then map the first name. To do that, I'm just going to click here and I'll type in first name. And there it is. The last name belongs, right? For email, again. And for phone, I'll just map the phone number here. All right. Now we have configured the create row action for Zoho Sheet. The next action that we need to do is to send a message in our click channel, notifying the manager of the new candidate. Similar to what we did now, we can just look for Zoho click over here. And we'll look for a message in channel action. There it is. So I'll just drag and drop this action here. I'll select the channel as new candidates because that's where I want this message to go. And I'm going to configure it as new candidate added. And I'm just going to map the candidate ID here. All right, the third action in this flow is creating a folder in Zoho Work Drive. So I'm going to search for Zoho Work Drive. And is there an action called create folder? Yes, there is. I'm just going to add that folder action here. All right, so what do we want the folder name to be? So here you have the folder name field. So I want it to be a combination of the candidate's ID in Recruit and the candidate's last name. So how do we do that? Just click on the folder name field, then go to the trigger. And now we can see on the right side, there are three blocks here. One is the trigger and one is the first action. And here's the second action. So all these actions will have variables which are available to be mapped in subsequent actions. So here I want information from the trigger. So I'm just going to click on the trigger and click on the candidate ID. Now I can add a hyphen here, add a space, hyphen, another space, and I want the candidate's last name here. All right, so we have configured the folder name. Now I want the folder to be created in this particular team. And under the team folder, I want it under general and general hiring. Now this action is also set. Now, when you build a flow, it's always best that once you have finished building this flow, it's always best that if you can test and debug that flow using a sample data. So you will see if the data is moving correctly or not, if you need to do a troubleshooting or not. And if needed, you can just fix your flow and then return to testing again. Before you switch on the flow, make sure that all actions are properly configured and only then switch on the flow. In this case, I'm just going to switch on the flow directly and we will see how data is moving. So I'm just going to go to Zoho Recruit. I'll just add a candidate from here. I'll just enter some sample data here. All right, I'll just use the same number over here. I'm just going to fill just a few fields here because I'm just showing it to you. Experience, I'll just enter as 5 years. And that should be it. I'm going to save this candidate. Oh, you have already heard the click channel notification. So let's see, just first look at whether that has appeared in the sheet. So you can see that whatever data I've entered has already appeared here. Now let's see if it has reached the click channel. And there it is. You'll also see how it looks like in the work drive folder. So you can see the folder is ready for you to upload the candidate's documents. And it has come under hiring. Now, if you go back to Zoho Flow and there's a history tab here, if you click on that, you will see how much time the execution has taken. And if you click on that particular execution, you can see all the data that has moved through each of these steps. So in case something fails, you can always go to the input and output data and see where the problem has occurred, and you can then fix that problem. So this is how you can use the history tab to diagnose any issues in your flows in case something goes wrong. All right, so now we have seen how easy it is to build a flow in Zoho Flow and how fast the workflow just got executed, right? So what would have taken 10 minutes of your time for a single candidate has only taken 1 second for Zoho Flow to complete it. Now imagine if you automate at least 20, 30 different flows in your team. Imagine the amount of time it's going to save and the number of errors that you're going to avoid, right? So let's move to the most exciting part where I'll discuss more use cases, which will be useful for you. All right, so we'll go to the first one. So in this one, I think it's kind of similar to what we discussed in the demonstration. So let's say you have a website and a page for candidates to fill in their details and apply for a particular role. You would have a form to collect their information, right? So let's say that you're doing it via Zoho Forms. Now, you would want the data that you have collected in forms to be automatically added in Zoho Recruit as a new candidate. But you don't want to create duplicates, right? So we'll see how we'll do that. And finally, you will also want to send a confirmation to that particular candidate that the application has been submitted and has been received by the team, and that we'll look into it and we'll reply if we are interested. So I'll just quickly show you how this workflow looks like in Zoho Flow. I'm not going to build the entire flow, but I've already created that flow here, so you can take a look at it. Yeah, it's this one. So this is how that flow will look like in Zoho Flow. So you have the entry submitted trigger, which takes in data from Zoho Forms. And in order to check for duplicate, what we are going to do is that we have a fetch record action. And I'm using the search value. So we have a search value to fetch a particular entry. So if there is a candidate with the same email address that has come from Zoho Forms, we want to see if that email and a candidate is already there in Zoho Recruit or not. So for that, we're going to first search for a candidate in Zoho Recruit using the email address. All right. Now, here we have added a logic element. So to get a logic element like decision, just go to the left side, just next to apps, you have logic. And here you can see there are different types of logic elements here. One is decision, and this is how it would look like. Here I've created a condition like email is null. That means this email address or that candidate ID is not there. You can even have it as candidate ID, because one of that has to be returned from Zoho Recruit in order for that candidate to exist with the same email address, right? Now, what happens if the candidate is not there, which means we have to create a new record. So I've added an action to create that new candidate in Zoho Recruit. And finally, if it's a new candidate only, we'll send an email confirming their application. All right. So this is how we can build a form to Zoho Recruit workflow. Awesome. Now we'll go to the next one. So this is a workflow for employee onboarding. So imagine that you have a new employee coming into your organization and you want to have perform a certain number of steps on the first day of their joining. Now, right after an employee is added to the organization, you would want to send a welcome email on their organizational email account. Now, in this case, it's Zoho Mail. So that should be done. And immediately after that, you might want to create, if you have an onboarding team, by the way, or if you have their own particular team, if someone is taking care of presenting them something, you would want to have a checklist, right? So if you have someone for onboarding, a team's dedicated for onboarding, then you would have a Zoho projects or some sort of task manager to have a set of tasks for them. So in this case, we are going to add that task in Zoho project. And finally, you'd also want to add an event in the team's calendar about this new joinee coming into their team. So let's look at how this workflow is built in Zoho Flow. So the first, as usual, the trigger is a record created in Zoho People. And we are sending an email to the new joinee about joining and with all the information that is needed for them to start their work in the new organization. You can configure the body of the email, the subject, and everything in this action. You can also bring in details from the trigger into the body of the email. For example, in this case, I have added the date of joining from the trigger. So you will get it from Zoho People, date of joining. So this, whatever value that this holds for this particular record will go into this place. I've also used it for the designation and the department name as well. The same with the first name. Now, this next action is to create a task list for the particular onboarding team. And finally, we are creating an event for the team with the date of joining as the start date and the new employee's details. So that's how that flow is done. We'll go to the next one. So let's say a new candidate has been selected. So you would have different stages of a candidate, right? You will have something like just applied and if they're undergoing an interview process, whether they have submitted tasks and whether they are selected. So once a candidate is selected, you would want to send them an offer letter. And if you're doing it using Zoho Sign, then you would want to send it immediately once they have been confirmed or selected. And you would also want to notify the hiring manager about this. So how do we do that? We'll see that as well. So here I've just created the send document part. You can add more workflows to it if depending on what kind of processes that you have set up in your team. So here you can see that under send document, I've connected using a Zoho Sign connection, and I've already created an offer letter template in Zoho Sign. So all I need to do is to map details like the recipient's phone, their name, and so on. And all of that will be available in the action configuration box here. So this is how easy it is to build all these different flows, right? We'll just look at a few more examples. I haven't built everything, but I'll just show you how one more flow is built in Zoho Flow. So this example takes a probation period into account. So most employees joining an organization will have a probation period, let's say for 90 days. And you would want the reviewing manager to be informed of this date, right? So we'll see how an event can be created once a new employee has joined, and an event can be created in the manager's calendar account. And after waiting for 90 days, you have to send a message to the manager asking to review the employee and send a report to HR. We'll see how this workflow can be built. So the entire workflow can be built in just five steps. The first is this trigger with the record created trigger from Zoho people. And an event will be created in Zoho calendar depending on based on the number of based on the information coming from this trigger. And another logic element here, right? It's a delay. So how do we add a delay? Just go to the logic tab on the left, and there is this delay button over here. So what this does is there are two options here. One is to delay for a particular amount of time, or you can delay until a certain date. So here in this case, I'm just going to enter 90 days. And what it will do is after performing this action, the flow will wait for 90 days before performing the next action. It's a very useful tool when you have real examples from your organization. You will find a lot of use with all these logic elements, but you'll definitely find the most use with just these two, decisions and delays. Now we have configured the message user action here, one for the manager and one for the HR. All right, so now I'll just quickly go through a couple more use cases. They are not built in Zoho Flow, but just to give, now that you have an idea of how to build it in Zoho Flow, I'll just give you a couple more use cases for you to get inspired from. So this one makes use of leave approvals and notifications. So when someone applies for a leave in Zoho People, you would want to, especially if this is especially the case if you have a project team set up for completing a project in a particular amount of time, you would want very crucial information to be passed to every team member there. So in those cases, you would want to notify in the project channel that there is a leave request. And we also need to add that info into everyone's calendar so that they can plan ahead for this particular leave, right? We'll go to the next use case. So imagine that you have a travel desk, which manages all your employees' uh, travel tickets, reimbursements, and so on. So whenever you have an employee requesting for a travel, and when the travel desk has booked a ticket for them, usually these tickets would come in the form of emails, right? And these emails are most likely templated. That means the format of the email will be mostly the same, and only the information in that email changes. You can make use of Zoho Flow's email trigger to extract information from these emails, and then you can use that information to be sent to other platforms like Zoho Sheet in this case, where you'll store the booking details in a spreadsheet, send details to the employee that their booking is confirmed, and add the travel dates to the team calendar. All right. So this is how you can use the different types of triggers as well. Now, there are even more kind of triggers Once you start exploring Flow, you will get to know that different use cases that you come across in your organization can be solved using these different types of triggers. Now, that should be it for today's session. There are plenty of other use cases as well. So these are just the simple 2, 3, 4-step workflows that I've introduced to you. Once you look into your team or your organization, you will see that there are maybe 10 or 15-step workflows. So in those cases, what you need to do is to just draw out the workflow diagram on a piece of paper, see how the data should be moving, and then map the different apps those actions are related to. And once you have that idea, you can easily come to Zoho Flow and build those workflows. Now, with that note, I hope this has been a very useful webinar for all of you. I will hand over the session to Sharon, but before that, oh, I'm sorry, I just had one more example for you. So shall I just give you this example? I think we have time. So we'll quickly go through this example just so that you can get more inspiration from it. So let's say you have a work drive folder for these candidates. You remember the demo example, right? You have created a new work drive folder for the candidate to upload their documents. And based on the submissions, you want to create a task for the reviewer. And based on the kind of submission, so if it's a write a document, it means that it's probably a textual task. Then in that case, you need the respective manager to take care of that. If it's something else, maybe a design or something, you would want a different manager to take it up. So based on that, you can create a decision and then add a project to Zoho Flow. To Zoho Projects. And finally, send a notification in Zoho Click. All right. So that should be it.